Thank you for joining. My name is Stuart from Radian Group, and thank you for joining your shared ownership webinar. And welcome on this very sunny, warm afternoon. This is a fantastic opportunity for you to learn more about this very popular scheme and really understand how it can help you get your foot onto the home ownership ladder. I would also like to welcome our panelists this afternoon, specialists in their fields, all here to help you today. So thank you for joining, everyone. The webinar today will run for around 30 minutes. And during our time together, you will have the opportunity to ask our panel questions about this wonderful home buying scheme. It's a challenging time at the moment for everyone. I think it's fair to say, with the COVID pandemic. I think we've all taken time to reflect on our plans for the future. And hopefully after sharing our insight with you today, we can really help you with your plans and hopefully turn those next steps into a reality for you. Shared ownership is a great scheme, offers you buyers the wonderful opportunity to purchase a new or second-hand home more affordably. How with a smaller amount of mortgage, and you pay a low affordable rent on the remaining portion, and then over time you have the option to buy more shares in your new home, and ultimately you have the chance to own your own home outright by buying the full share of the property. So it's a fantastic scheme. Firstly, I would like to introduce our guests and invite them just to speak for a couple of minutes about their part in the home buying journey. Then I will pose some questions to our panel and invite you all to add your questions to the Q&A, which is running live on the screen on the right-hand side. Hopefully you can see all of that. Fingers crossed we don't have any technical problems today, but it should all run to plan. So without further ado, our panel today consists of 4 members. We have, I'll just outline who we have with us, and then I'm going to go to each of our members just to share for a couple of minutes just their part home buying journey for you, and then we'll dive straight into the question and answer session. So we have with us, we have Tanya from Radian Group, who looks after new home sales. So that element of when you reserve the property and through the buying process from that side of things. We have Steve, who's joined us from Talk24 from the mortgage side of things, who's an independent mortgage advisor, working for one of the largest new homes mortgage specialists in the country. So we've got Steve to help us out from a lending perspective and how we get the mortgage and all that sort of thing. We've also got Nalton. Thank you for joining us, Nalton, from the legal side of things. So Nalton's a solicitor from the firm Capsticks. Thank you so much for joining us today, Nalton, and hopefully you'll be able to help our buyers with any legal questions, how that all works as part of the journey. And last but definitely not least, we have Daniel. Daniel, thank you for joining us. Daniel is from Radian Group as well. Daniel looks after the sort of what happens next later after you purchase your property side of things. You know, how do you buy more shares? How do you eventually own the whole property? And if you wanted to resell that property, how does all of that work? So hopefully we've got 4 specialists here that's got that whole end-to-end journey that can really help you to go away with some useful insight today. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pass over to Tanya from Radian Group for around the sales side of things first of all, just to say hello to everyone and just a little bit about what you do, Tanya.
Hi, good to be here today. I work, as Stuart said, for Radian Homes. Our team work on the new build side, where we'll help you from the very beginning of your journey when you're first looking for a new build home on shared ownership, all the way through to choosing your home, looking at your home, and right through exchanging contracts. And then finally, on the day you move in, we'll still be there and handing you the new keys.
Excellent. Thank you, Tanya, and thank you for joining us today. I'm sure there'll be plenty of questions coming through from our audience, so that's fantastic. Steve, I'm gonna come over to you from the mortgage side of things. Thanks for joining us. If you'd like to just say hello to everyone and a little bit about what you do.
Indeed, yeah. No, thank you for inviting me. Yeah, so my name's Steve. I'm a director at Talk24. As Stuart alluded to, we are mortgage specialists. We're independent, and we specialise certainly in shared ownership, also in new build properties. We do the boring bit, really. We do the mortgage, the lending bit. We look at assessing you to see what you're able to borrow, what you can afford to buy up to. So that would then enable yourself and people like Tanya to get you into a property that fits your affordability side of things. So we can look at the lending side, all the various lenders that there are out there, and fit the right sort of product, the right mortgage around the property that suits you best, really.
That's great. Thanks, Steve. And thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure there'll probably be some questions around mortgage availability at the moment and just sort of what's happening in the market, really. Can I still get a mortgage at the moment? That kind of stuff from the audience. So thank you, Steve. I'm going to move over to Nalton. Nalton, thanks for joining us. Nalton's works for a company called Capsticks, legal firm, and a solicitor. Nalton, thanks for joining us. If you'd like to just say a few words.
Thank you very much, Stuart. Thanks for inviting me to take part in this webinar today. Yes, as you've mentioned, I am a solicitor and I work for a firm of solicitors called Capsticks. We act for Radian on the sales of the new built properties. My job involves preparing the legal documents. So the documents that I draft will make their way to your solicitor for them to consider and raise any questions that they might have in relation to those documents. We liaise with the developer who's built the actual properties on the site, and we deal with them. We ask them questions about the nature of the property, about the legal questions that we might have. That all happens on the background so that we are prepared for your solicitor when the legal pack makes its way to them, basically. So that's where we are. And we are a specialist firm dealing with shared ownership property.
Thanks, Nalton. That's brilliant. Excellent. So I'm going to move over to Daniel. Last but not least, Daniel plays a very important role at Radian Group, working with the team, looking after, once you purchase your property at the beginning, what happens later on, and that service that we provide out to our customers. So Daniel, if you'd like to just say hello and say a few words.
Thanks, Stuart. Yeah, thanks for having me along. It's really good to be here. So like Stuart said, my name's Dan Maskell. I work as a post-sales officer within Radian, and we deal with a number of different transactions. Really, once you've moved into your property and along your kind of process of being a homeowner. These include staircasing, which is buying further shares in your property while you're living there. Remortgaging. After a couple of years, if you want to remortgage, we look after that. Also transfer of equity. So if you want to add anybody onto the mortgage, onto the deeds, take anybody off, those kind of things. And like Stuart said as well, we also deal with the resale. So when the time comes that you're ready to kind of move on, we're there to help you as well, and guide you through that process of reselling the property. So a variety of different things, but all under kind of one umbrella.
That's great, Dan, and thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate that. Hopefully we've got buyers that have got many questions around sort of what happens later on coming through, so that's great. I can see a question in the panel there around sound and visuals. Hopefully that's working for everyone. I think on the whole it might be okay, so maybe just have a little tweak with your settings there, Richard. Brilliant. Well, thanks everyone. That's a great round robin there of who we've got with us. Hopefully your specialisms can help our buyers today. So what I'm going to do, please do post your questions, and I'll keep an eye on that, and I'll come back to some of those coming in. So do have a think about what you'd like to know about shared ownership, and we can help you. Tanya, I'm gonna come back to you if that's okay, just with just a couple of questions on my own, I think, just to get the sort of ball rolling. Shared ownership. I've got my head around the scheme. I've got a few places that I'd like to view at the moment. What's my first step? How do we go about that right now?
How do you go about viewing the properties? Well, for the ones that we have ready for people to look at, the first step is that we will actually take you through a virtual tour of the property. So you can gain a really good feel for the property you're looking at without actually having to leave your home and drive all the way there. We'll take you on a guided tour around the property to see if that is something indeed that you want, and that will help you on your journey so that you don't have to keep going out and looking at all these properties. You can look at them first online. Should you find the one that you think is the right one for you and you really want to go and see it, of course we can. We do have some new guidelines. Obviously, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we do have to look after both yours and our staff's health and safety. However, we'll be there. We'll have plenty of provisions. The only thing that will be different now is that although we'll open the door for you, you will escort yourself around the property on your own. We won't be with you, but we will be there waiting for you outside, socially distanced, of course, ready to answer any questions you have when you return.
Brilliant, thanks, Tanya. And I think that's a really important point. There's lots out in the media at the moment around housing being open for business following the announcement by the government the other week. And it's really important that we adhere to all those safety guidelines, social distancing, and just to assure our audience that we have all those measures in place, and that health and safety is our number one priority. So we will work with you on that in the best possible way. But that's great, Tanya. And so I found my property. Fantastic. What do I do now? How do I reserve it?
Well, reserving itself couldn't be simpler, but whether you can reserve it or not will just depend on whether you've spoken to one of the nominated mortgage advisors who will, as Steve was saying earlier, work out what is the purchase price that you can look to buy, and more importantly, what's the right appropriate share for you. Everyone's financial circumstances are different, and we want to make sure that it's affordable, not only in the now, but is likely to be affordable and sustainable for the future. And once that's done, which could be before or after you've chosen your property, reserving is simple as giving us a call, letting us know which property it is that you want to reserve, and literally just paying a £250 reservation fee. That will secure the property for you. And at that point, we will then book an appointment to go through all the finer details with you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Tanya. That's really, really useful to know. Steve, I'm just going to jump over from a mortgage side of things because I've seen a couple of mortgage questions come up. But first of all, just I need to get a mortgage to buy my shared ownership property. What's the first step around that? How do I do the application? And there's a question that came in around, do I need to do that before I reserve the property?
Absolutely. Well, it's a very good question. So, yeah, the most important thing, as Tanya just alluded to, was can you afford it? Is it affordable? And it has to meet certain guidelines because shared ownership, being the way it's funded, there are certain rules that we have to adhere to when we are looking at what purchase prices you can afford up to. Which is why we need to ask a certain number of questions all around affordability. So things like what your earnings are, what your outgoings are, so what debts you have, credit cards, loans, that sort of thing, how much money you have saved. So the level of deposit has a big bearing of what you can afford up to. There's a big range of share that you are able to buy from and to. So the minimum share in shared ownership is 25% of the property, up to a maximum of 75%. Some properties have different share levels. So some you have to buy at least, say, a 40% share of the property. So they're all sort of calculations that we do in a reasonably quick phone call. We're probably talking 15, 20 minutes. Very socially distanced, because we are able to do this totally remotely. We're able to do it over the phone with people. And even the next step, so once a property had been sourced and you were happy and it was all going ahead, we are also able to do the full mortgage application all remotely as well now. So it's all able to be done within those guidelines. But yes, in a nutshell, it is about assessing people's affordability. Whether you do it before or after, it's totally up to you. I've always come from the angle of look at your finance first. I probably would because of what I do. But what I mean by that is you find a house, you absolutely fall in love with it, and then you're told you can't afford that property. That's quite annoying. So we always sort of suggest try and establish your affordability to enable you to look at something that's appropriate. That would probably be my advice.
Lovely, thanks, Steve. That's really, really useful. Nalton, I'm just going to come over to you from the legal side of things, just to get the ball rolling from this angle. We all know that we need a solicitor. I think it's fair to say that I don't think everyone really knows entirely the process and necessarily what happens in that legal process. At what point do I need to start talking to you to get my sale underway?
Thanks, Stuart. So it's important to bear in mind, as Steve mentioned, that affordability is the number one factor that needs to be assessed first of all. And once you've got your mortgage approved and probably in principle, then you should start thinking about instructing a solicitor. There will be two solicitors involved in the process. One acting for the seller, being Radian, and the other one acting for you. The duty, the foremost important duty of a solicitor is to act in the best interests of their client. So your solicitor will be the one that you will be liaising with, and I, as a solicitor for Radian, will not be able to speak to you, but only with your solicitor. There are certain steps that the solicitor will need to satisfy before the process starts, and one of the most important ones is that they will, just even before they take you on as a client, they will need to check your identity and the source of funds. So there will be those checks that will need to be carried out by your solicitor. So don't be surprised by strange questions, the nature of which might be, where did this money come from? Or may I have your bank statements for the last 6 months? We all have a process to follow, be that the seller's solicitor or the buyer's solicitor. We all have a code of conduct to follow, which is set out by the Law Society and the Solicitors Regulation Authority, and it's religiously followed. So we do rely on the on that information that your solicitor would have carried out those checks. So do allow time for that process to take place. Yeah.
That's great. No, that's brilliant. Thank you, Nalton. I'm just going to piggyback. I just saw a question come in from Michael just around stamp duty and how it works with shared ownership. I don't know if you can share any insight on that.
So the beauty of shared ownership, and it's a unique offer, it's a unique position, is that you don't have to pay stamp duty at the point of purchase. You can put it back. So you have an option to either pay stamp duty on the share that you buy, say 25%, or you don't have to pay it at that excuse me, at that point, but put it back until you reach 80% ownership of your property. That's not to say that if your property is within the allowed threshold that the government has announced, then you may qualify for being exempt and have no SDLT to pay effectively. But that's what happens, and a lot of people decide not to pay the SDLT at the point of purchase. They put it back.
Lovely, thank you, Nalton. That's really, really useful. There was a question. Apologies to our audience. There's a question that I can't get back up to in the Q&A. And if you could kindly repost it, it was around NHS and being a key worker. If you could pop that back on again, that would be really appreciated. Because I think that's obviously very in tune with what's going on at the moment, and we'd love to be able to answer that for you. I'm just going to come to you, Daniel, just around, there was a question around the staircasing process. Could you just tell us a little bit more about how that process works? And also there was another question that's come in around offers on resales on second-hand properties on the market. So two questions, just how does staircasing work? And can I put an offer on a property that's being marketed at the moment for a certain price?
Perfect. No worries at all, Stuart. So firstly, in terms of staircasing, it is simply the process of buying further shares in your property. So with the minimum share, say when you purchase the property being 25%, you can look to jump up in brackets of say 5 to 10% throughout that. You can also go as high as just buying the remaining 75% straight outright. So staircasing is just simply buying the further shares whenever you're ready to. In terms of the process involved, what we always say is have a look on websites such as Rightmove, Zoopla, that kind of thing. Just get a feel of what property prices are in your area for similar properties. That should give you an indication of how much your property will be worth, say, outright. Then what you would do is instruct a RICS qualified surveyor. So they would come out, produce a RICS report for you, and that will tell you how much the property is worth. And your staircasing will be based on the value of the property as it is today. So say you bought a property and it's gone down in value, again, it will cost you less money to buy the remaining shares. Again, if the property's increased, you will pay slightly higher to buy those remaining shares. So what the new build team will do when you buy your property is check your affordability, and that's because we want you to buy as much as possible at the start, just so you own as much, and then hopefully it's not going to cost you as much going forward to buy the remaining shares. But it's a very simple process that we do. We use it all through the solicitors. You will need a solicitor to act for you on the purchase, and we will liaise with them. You can do that via a variety of ways, by remortgage. What a lot of people do, they get their initial mortgage when they buy the property, and then further down the line they remortgage and actually buy further shares at the same time. Again, if you were to come into some money or circumstances change, that kind of thing, you can buy again in lump sums that way. So nice and easy process to go through, and we, like I say, a dedicated team there to help and guide you through. If you do have any specific questions, those kind of things along the process, we have guides available. Second question, in terms of putting an offer in on a shared ownership property that's available for sale, because the current owner's share has been valued by a RICS surveyor, unfortunately you can't put an offer in on their share, just because that is kind of the set values by those RICS surveys. However, what we would do is always do an affordability assessment again if you were looking to buy a property, and it may be that you can buy a slightly higher share.
Dan, that's very comprehensive. Thank you so much. Hopefully that's actually probably answered a few other questions that have come in as well. Tanya, I'm going to come back to you just on the sales process side of things, sort of in in a first instance. There was a couple of questions that came in. One was around the speed of the process, how long it takes to get through to that point of exchange of contracts, and ultimately, when do I move in after that? And there was also a question which ties in the reservation fee that you put down as a buyer at the beginning. What happens with that?
Hi, well, the easiest one to answer is the one with the reservation fee. The £250 reservation fee you put down at the beginning basically gets taken off the price of the house at the end. So the reservation fee is actually forming part of the property price. So it's not an additional fee, it's just part of the price for buying the property. How long does it take to go through the process? Well, as part of the process, your solicitor and your mortgage broker will need to undertake certain things for you. And obviously this does take time. We would normally say that 4 weeks is about an appropriate timescale to get through to exchange. However, if you're not getting a mortgage and you're paying cash, then it might be quicker. But there are instances where there can be delays, and we'll bear with you with that. As to when you move in, well, that really depends on whether you're buying a property that's ready. If it's ready, you can move in very, very quickly. There are no restrictions from our side as to when you can actually move in. It's literally just as fast as we can get you with the solicitors and through the process. For properties that aren't built yet, it's going to be when they're built, and when they're built and they've been through a quality process to ensure that they are ready for you to move into.
Lovely, thank you, Tana. I'm going to stay with you because member of the audience, Laura, thank you so much for reposting your question around NHS workers, and I think your question there is a government proposed scheme which I think you're alluding to is called First Homes, which the government are going through a consultation on at the moment around sort of changing home ownership sort of across the board, essentially. But it's in its very, very early days of consultancy. So there's nothing sort of in stone there. But in terms of shared ownership is actually an affordable way to get onto the housing ladder. Tanya, would you be able to just sort of outlay, for an NHS worker or a key worker in general, the core benefits of using this product, this scheme, versus going out onto the open market in terms of how it can benefit me with affordability?
Well, it's all down to each person's personal affordability. The government scheme alluded to is a scheme that, as you say, the government are working on with the developers as to whether they can offer a discount on the new builds. Shared ownership is a different scheme to that and is already seen as being funded in order to help you buy the property, because you're only buying a share of it. The government haven't made any announcements to say that they would be offering a discounted house price and assistance towards you buying a reduced share of that, although who knows, whatever will happen in the future. But key benefits for you, it's all about affording to get onto the housing market for the size of the property that you're looking to buy. It may well be on the open market, you can only afford to buy a studio flat, but what you actually need is a house, and you may have children and that might not suit you. So it's a way of buying a property that fits in with your own financial circumstances. And of course, the deposits that are due on shared ownership are much, much less than the deposits that are due on outright sale properties, because in general, you're only looking at a 5% minimum percentage of the share you're buying, not the whole property.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. Sorry, I had a little problem getting off mute there. Thank you very much for that. That's very comprehensive. That's brilliant. There's lots of questions coming in really quickly, so thank you, everyone. I'm trying to keep up with them, and if we don't get to your question, apologies, but we'll try and cover as much as we can. We have been running for half an hour, but we'll run for sort of 10-15 minutes longer. There's lots of questions that need answering, so if everyone can hang on, that'd be great. Steve, I'm going to come to you. I think it's quite a big question out there at the moment with mortgages and applications around furlough, and how, if I'm on furlough, how's that affecting me as a buyer? What's happening in that area at the moment?
Absolutely. No, it's a very valid and relevant point at the moment. So the majority of lenders will accept somebody who is on furlough, but they will only take that income that you're currently on. They're not going, unfortunately, at the moment to speculate when you're going to go back and what you're going to go back on to. So the myth is you can't get a mortgage. You can, but it may be reduced because of the income that you're currently on. So it may not be ideal. It wouldn't enable you to perhaps buy the property at the levels that you would want to be buying a property at. So yeah, ideally it will be a case of looking on the basis of when you're going to go back and be back up to 100% of your income. But there are lenders out there who will work on, because we have situations, I've got cases at the moment where maybe a couple and one is on furlough, and yeah, we're able to help in certain circumstances. Yes.
Lovely, thanks, Steve. I think that's a very important question out there at the moment, but that's brilliant. Lovely. Sorry, got a number of questions here. There's one that's come in around, Nicola, thank you for posting your question there, around specification. I think with that one, it's very much on a scheme by scheme basis. We will always try and put in a good quality specification in our new homes. That will vary with scheme to scheme, depending on the contractor that we're working with. But we will always do our very best to put in a high quality specification. Is that comparable to Help to Buy scheme, which I'm going to interpret as the open market? I think on the open market for private sales out there, I think you might get a little bit more choice perhaps. But I will caveat that with the homes that we have available. We have good quality specifications, a wide range of sizes of homes in locations across the south. So please have a look at our website, and I'll point you in that direction when we get to the end of the call. So thank you for that. Nalton, I'm going to come back to you just quickly. As a solicitor, as a buyer, why do I need to use a solicitor that understands shared ownership specifically, or can I just go to any solicitor? Is there any risk of me doing that? Why should I use, say your good self, as opposed to just a solicitor on the high street, which might be practicing in different areas?
Thank you, Stuart. Yes, shared ownership property. Well, the sale of a property with a shared ownership product is different to any other transaction, because it involves a lease which is designed by the Help to Buy, Homes England, the government, effectively. So it's a very specialist product. We recommend that buyers of shared ownership properties use specialist solicitors with specialist knowledge, because they know and understand the product, they are very familiar with it, and they raise relevant questions. And to give you an example, we would from time to time have solicitors who are not familiar with the shared ownership product raise questions which are really not necessary and simply delay the process. For example, they raise questions on the provisions of the lease which have been placed in the lease by Homes England, the government, and we have no say, and there's no way of having them amended or removed or changed in any way. So with a solicitor who's familiar with the shared ownership product, you would not have that. With a solicitor that's familiar with the shared ownership product, you get the inquiries answered quickly. They only deal with relevant questions. And what we find is that the usual solicitors deal with inquiries at the beginning of the scheme. In other words, they raise site-wide inquiries, and once those are satisfied and answered, then all the sales thereafter will have practically no inquiries. So it's a smooth process if you use a solicitor that's familiar with shared ownership, and not solicitors are familiar with it, I have to say.
That's great. I think that's very important, Nalton, and for our buyers, and that applies to the mortgage side of things as well. You know, shared ownership is it has its own sort of way of doing things a little bit in the processes, and I guess it's, if you've got a wallpaper to come and paint your house, you might not necessarily get the right result. You might get a result, but just take that a little bit longer. So it's good to go to those specialist partners, and we can absolutely recommend those to our buyers. We're just conscious of time. We've got time for a few more questions. So again, apologies if I don't get to them all. I'm just trying to sort of pick out and get a nice broad picture for everybody. One thing that does come up a lot, and I've seen a couple that have come through, is around changes to the property. If I buy a shared ownership property, what can I do to that property? You know, there are certain sort of smaller things that we can do to the property, but ultimately we want our buyers to feel like they are owners. But I think it's important to understand that obviously we are co-owners to that property, and there are more significant things that can't be done generally. I think we've probably got time for one last main question. And Tanya, I'm just going to come over to you on this one. I've seen it come up a couple of times in the Q&A. First of all, value of my property, is that going to go down? It's probably a concern for anybody who's reserved a property at the moment, and those looking to what the potential impact of what the market might do in the immediate future. Would be able to sort of share your thoughts around that for our audience?
Yeah, not a problem at all. And I totally understand, with everything that's been going on, why that would be a concern to people, because at the moment with COVID-19, obviously the property market halted for a while. So everyone was sat there going, okay, no one's buying houses at the moment. What's going to happen to property prices? In reality, apparently people didn't stop buying houses just because of COVID-19. And we were absolutely astonished by the number of inquiries we've had over the last 8 weeks and the number of people that reserved. And from our experience, last week, when obviously the property market viewing restrictions were released, our inquiry levels have tripled, and we almost have more people than we can get back to at the moment wanting to reserve properties. So I guess as the property market is generally based along supply and demand, I would say at the moment demand hasn't gone away, which is leading me to think that at the moment property prices are unlikely to go down. But hey, I guess you never know. We've started to see mortgage surveyors coming back and valuing properties now, and mortgage surveyors are valuing properties at what they were sold at pre-coronavirus currently, for the few that we've had. So they seem to agree with us that the property values haven't changed. We do keep an eye on that ourselves, and we do get the properties valued every 3 months to make sure that we are marketing the properties at the correct value. It's something that we do in line with Homes England's guidance as to marketing the properties. So should anything happen in the property market, then yes, of course, we will be reducing those prices in line. But at the moment, I can't see any evidence to suggest that is going to be a possibility. But at the end of the day, most people are getting a mortgage on shared ownership, and your mortgage lender will also have their own surveyor that has their own opinion on that too.
Yeah, that's great, Tanya. Yeah, it comes back to that age-old thing around supply and demand. If there's lots of people out there wanting to buy, then the market reacts to that, and prices sort of remain sustained. So, really good question coming in there from you guys. Thank you very much. I'm going to wrap it up there, everyone. Just conscious of time, we've been running for a little bit over. So, I really hope you've got some useful insight out of today. We've had some great questions. I know there's some that we didn't get to, so my sincere apologies. And we will be holding another webinar in the not too distant future, so look out for the invite, and hopefully we can answer any of those questions then for you. Thank you everyone for your contribution today. I think this has been really, really good. There's been some great questions, and I hope the information that we've shared today will go a long way in helping you plan for the future. Further contact information for the Radian Group and useful guides can be found on our website, radianhomes.co.uk, and also with our partner organisation Yarlington at yarlingtonhomes.co.uk for homes down in the southwest of England. So please have a look on there. There's some very, very useful content on there, and we've got some nice video content that talks you through the whole process as well. So please go there, take a look. Thank you to all of our panelists. I think it's been very, very useful. Please do follow us on Twitter at Radian Homes and also at Yarlington Homes. Follow us for our updates and product releases. We put everything on there as well. So thank you again, everyone. I wish you a very pleasant afternoon. Please take care and stay safe, and we'll see you again very soon. Thank you.